Imagine fewer red hurdles, easier innovation, and DeFi projects that scale faster than ever before, all while staying in the borders of the United States. Welcome back to JRNY TV, your #1 source for breaking crypto news, clarity, and strategy. Today we are unpacking a major shakeup from the SEC, the proposed innovation exemption for DeFi that could change everything. We're going to explore what this means for the developers, how it differs from enforcement tactics, and why mainstream adoption could be just around the corner. This series isn't just about the news, it is about the opportunity. So strap in, because the next set of moves from regulators could define where DeFi goes and where you will be positioning yourself. Innovation over enforcement, SEC's new direction. The SEC is taking a surprisingly and potentially groundbreaking turn with its new innovation exemption aimed at DeFi. Instead of relying on the same old enforcement tactics that have stifled innovation and pushed developers overseas for years, the agency is finally shifting their gears. The exemption would give genuinely decentralized projects, those publishing open source code and building permissionless systems, a legal runway to operate without being immediately targeted for securities violations. This move marks a real change in tone. While centralized platforms that blur the line between exchange and token issuer are still on the radar, the SEC is signaling that developers who aren't profiting from token sales or acting like traditional intermediaries may even finally catch a break. The exemption encourages transparency and adds safeguards, such as disclosures, fraud protection, and governance structures, giving projects room to breathe while holding bad actors accountable. If this shift plays out as intended, it could unleash a new wave of growth for US-based DeFi teams, no longer forced to dodge legal threats or flee to crypto havens abroad. Builders could double down on innovation from within the United States, something that has not been possible at scale ever before. And with clear rules finally emerging, it could finally pave the way for bigger institutional players and serious capital to finally enter the DeFi arena without fear. On-chain activity over those traditional intermediaries. Here's a major paradigm shift. On-chain activity is starting to outweigh traditional intermediaries in the SEC's eyes. Regulators are recognizing that blockchain native systems, where governance as well as activities occur transparently on-chain, they pose fewer risks than opaque intermediaries. Essentially, if there's no centralized gatekeeper controlling funds or token flows, then enforcement is less likely to trigger. This alignment gives decentralized developers a significant advantage. Projects that truly run through smart contracts as well as open source code managed for community benefit rather than profit can now argue that they don't fit the mold for securities issuers. If the innovation exemption is approved, it emphasizes that decentralized on-chain processes could in fact hold more weight than traditional platforms, supporting a healthier, more transparent DeFi ecosystem for everyone. By pivoting focus on chain behavior, transaction data, code governance, and open ledgers, the SEC may help to ensure DeFi's future is in fact built on trust and clarity rather than legal ambiguity. Instead of chasing intermediaries with enforcement, regulators may incentivize protocols to self-regulate, making on-chain activity the primary measure of legitimacy, keeping DeFi innovation in the US, one of the biggest pain points in crypto. Okay, so over the past few years, it's been kind of the brain drain. US developers and startups fleeing to friendlier jurisdictions like Singapore, Switzerland, or Dubai. With regulatory pressure stifling innovation, many promising projects never unfortunately made it past the ideation stage in the States. But with this new innovation exemption, the SEC clearly is trying to keep talent and innovation onshore. If passed, this shift could mark the beginning of a US-based DeFi resurgence. Developers everywhere would have much more clarity and a lot less fear, allowing them to focus on building instead of lawyering up. This move could also help to attract venture capital back into US DeFi startups who've otherwise been hesitant to fund teams caught in regulatory limbo. According to Galaxy Digital, DeFi funding dropped nearly 76% year over year in 2023 alone, largely due to regulatory uncertainty. But this kind of policy could change that narrative and fast. There's also a national security and competitiveness angle. If the US wants to lead in financial innovation and stay ahead of the CBDC-heavy countries like China, it must encourage open financial innovation like DeFi. The exemption doesn't just help builders. It in fact protects the country's long-term interests in staying a leader in financial technology, known as fintech. Supporters versus those critics. Is it too risky, or is it just bold enough? Reactions to the SEC's proposed innovation exemption have been loud, to say the least, and deeply divided. On one side, you've got DeFi builders, crypto lawyers, and pro-innovation policymakers that are celebrating the move as historic, calling it the most forward-thinking stance the SEC has taken in crypto in years. Firms like Paradigm and Blockchain Association have both praised the exemption of a lifeline for developers who've been paralyzed by legal gray zones for years. But critics are not holding back either. Some say the move opens the door to unregulated financial chaos, arguing that bad actors could in fact exploit the system under the guise of decentralization. Senator Elizabeth Warren and other crypto skeptics, they warn that this could potentially weaken investor protections and make it easier for scams to thrive. The concern is that the SEC could be overreacting after years of being seen as too aggressive, now swinging much too far in the other direction. Still, the exemption, it's being shaped with built-in accountability. Developers, they must see transparency standards, avoid controlling user funds, and please operate in good faith. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card, but rather a defined pathway to innovation without instant fear of a lawsuit. The debate boils down to a single question: can regulators foster innovation without creating those loopholes? That's the fine line the SEC is now trying to walk, and how they strike the balance could in fact define the next decade of DeFi as we know it. DeFi's turning point starts now. So here we are, possibly at a massive inflection point for DeFi in the United States. For years, builders have been stuck in regulatory limbo, unsure if the SEC was going to let them thrive or slap them down. But this new innovation exemption could be the moment that flips the script. So if you're developing real decentralized tools and you're doing it transparently, you may finally have a legit path forward. That's not just good for builders, it's good for users, investors, and the future of finance as a whole. The US has a chance to reestablish itself as a leader in open source financial innovation instead of watching other countries take the lead. And while the debates will continue and the details will inevitably matter, tone has very clearly shifted. DeFi isn't something to be shut down. It is in fact something to be better understood and more supported. Make no mistake, this will not solve everything overnight, but it's a good start. And for those of us who have been in the trenches or watching DeFi evolve, that is huge, to say the least. So if you're building, do keep building. And if you're investing, stay sharp. And if you're just getting started, this might be your moment. Stay tuned and stay ahead. We'll be sure to catch you in the next one.